My name is Random Tuesday, and welcome to my She-Ra from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power cosplay tutorial. For the honor of Grayskull! The bulk of She-Ra's cosplay is the unitard or one-piece bodysuit, or whatever you would like to call it. I assembled it all as one piece, largely because it keeps your line, everything just a little bit cleaner and together and more in place. It also means like when you do things like raise your arms above your head, you don't end up separating the skirt and the shorts from the top and having things shift around in ways that you don't want them to. The flip side of that makes it a little bit harder to go to the bathroom because you have to take pretty much all of it off in order to do so, but you know, there are trade-offs. Now, to start with, I just assembled essentially a very basic Leotard style top. I based it off of the patterns that I've used previously for things like my Spider-Gwen cosplay. I do have a pattern for She-Ra as well as many other patterns available in my store, so if you are looking to make your own and don't want to draft your own pattern, then you can head on over there and grab the one that I've already made for you. I did add a bust dart in this one, which I haven't done on other leotards because it is functionally sleeveless, and I didn't want as much gaping here right around the armpit, so I wanted it to keep nice and snug. All of mine are double layered because I find that white spandex in general and white fabric in general is just a little more see-through than I want it. So I did a layer of regular fabric and then a layer of lining. I assembled the top front, I just stitched the darts in place, and then I put the pattern on first because it's a lot easier to stitch this design on in the gold when you don't have as many pieces to wrestle with. For all of these gold pieces, I ironed Wonder Under, which is a bondable interfacing. So I iron it first to the gold fabric, then cut out the gold fabric, and then iron the gold fabric to the white fabric, and then lastly, to finish it all off, I do top stitching in a gold thread to the white fabric to keep it all nice and secure and in place. So once the gold is affixed to the front, then I stitch together the front and the back, side seams, and then shoulder seams. And then next I added the collar. And the collar I did in essentially the same way. I did that fusible Wonder Under interfacing, and then I ironed it so that it basically wraps around the edge here. So it starts on this side and then wraps to the other side. You'll want to do a few notches here on the inside to just kind of not have too much fabric bunching. And then make sure, if you can, your inside is a little bit longer than your outside. So when, kind of like bias tape, when you top stitch the outside in place, you also catch the inside and keep both of them nice and secure. And that finishes the edge line of your collar. And the collar here lines up right in the center with this design, so you'll want this design fully in place before you attach your collar. Then I finished up the back by adding a zipper in the back seam about halfway down the back so that I can still use the stretch of the material to just whoop, pull it on over my butt and then my hips and then just kind of shimmy into it at the end. For these beautiful shoulder pieces, these stabby pauldrons, I drafted a pattern for them first in kind of what I thought would work out of paper and then fiddled around with it until I was happy with it. Once I liked the shape of it, I cut that shape out of just a very thin 2mm craft foam. Just the normal craft foam that you can pick up in most of the stores will work perfectly. And then from there, I made a same version of it, but out of the gold fabric. And I stitched an underside and an overside, so I made like a little pocket, like a pita pocket. Don't know why that's the only thing that I think of. And then I slip the foam to the inside of that pocket. Now to help it stick, you don't have to do this, but to help it stick, I also did add Wonder Under to that gold fabric, and then I ironed the foam to the fabric. Now it's not permanent. You can see places where it's starting to kind of peel away. On the plus side, I can just re-iron those down and it should re-affix it to the fabric. It's just not a permanent bond, but especially it helps on this underside to make the whole thing just a little bit smoother on the underside. Then once I've got the foam inside the sandwich, the pocket of fabric, I just stitched it directly to the shoulder seam. And then I take the seam and I top stitched it to the inside. So you can see this little bit of top stitching right here, just so that on the inside you don't really see the seam. The plus side of making them out of like a really thin soft foam is they bounce back into shape when inevitably someone runs into them at a convention, and you're not actually going to take someone's eye out. It's pretty soft. Then I made the shorts basically using a little pattern, a bicycle pattern, kind of style shorts. I actually just traced around a pair of bicycle shorts that I already had, but even just cropping short a pair of legging pattern that you have will totally work. Once I assembled them, before I attached them to the top, I also added those gold stripes down the sides. After that, I made the skirt, and the skirt is just most of a circle skirt. It's about 3/4, so it kind of goes all the way around. It should have a waist that is the same circumference as both the waist on the shorts and the shirt, which also should have the same circumference as each other. I took the waist down just a little bit, so it's at a slight angle right where it splits in the front, because there is a slight point to the top as well, and I wanted it to stay a consistent length all the way around, so I just adjusted the waist seam to accommodate for that. Then to assemble it all together, you have the top, the skirt, and the shorts. So I took the skirt and I basted it to the top, sort of right side to right side, matching the skirt in that center. So aligning it to that center, there's about a 1-inch gap from the center point on the shirt to where the skirt starts, just to keep it open a little bit so it doesn't fall together too much. The skirt ends up being sandwiched between the shirt and the shorts, so all of the seam is to the inside. So the skirt touches right side to the shirt, right side, and wrong side to the right side of the shorts. The last thing to do is add that belt piece, now that you have all three of them in place, or a belt, I use the term loosely, the waist decor. So you want to cut that out, matching that shape of the waist seam, getting that nice tight point. Much like you do on everything else, I ironed the under to it, and then ironed the gold to the white fabric, and then just top stitched that whole thing in place. The finishing touch on the body piece, once you've got it all assembled, or before that, it's kind of your choice, is the little center gem. I made mine just out of Sculpey. I painted it with some acrylic paints and then some nail polish over the top to make it nice and smooth and shiny. And then I just glued it directly to the shirt using some E6000. Then the next thing is to make the bracers. And the bracers are made like many of the foam pieces in a very similar way to the shoulder pieces. So essentially I cut out the design with foam. I sketched the design by doing the classic wrap yourself in cling film, wrap it in tape, and then draw the design on it that you like, cut that out, and that becomes your pattern. So I took that pattern and then I cut one out of foam, one in each direction because it's not quite symmetric. And then I also cut that out of fabric. And I ironed one under to it. And then you kind of sew them together just along this top seam here and along this bottom seam here, making like a sheath that you can stick the foam in. So you slide the foam all the way through. And then what you do is you just sew them together right here, right sides to right sides, and then you flip it inside out. And the flipping inside out can get a little bit tricky, so if you need to, because your wrist is kind of small, you might want to leave this like top section unstitched, just so that you can flip it and then do this last little bit by hand. But essentially you're like shoving it through like this. And it does the job, but it gets a little bit tricky. And that puts the seam nice and on the inside. And if you need to, you can smooth this out by just ironing it again. If you can stuff it to kind of iron it, do not put your hand on the inside when you iron the bracer. Now the important part is make sure you're using a stretch stitch, because you're going to need that slight stretch in the fabric to help you both flip it inside out and also help you slide it on and off. The cape is made out of one of my favorite materials. It's just a peach skin satin, so it's got a nice slight matte texture to it and just an excellent drape. It just hangs super duper well. In fact, guess how many cosplays of mine I have used this particular material on? Try and name them in the comments below. It essentially starts out as just a big old square. It's about 1 meter long and like 1.5 meters wide. And then I pleat in most of the top corner edges, so it makes it about like 1/3 of the length that it starts out as, and stitch those all together. So you get a nice little pleat. And then I just snap them directly to the back of this cape at a slight angle so it flares out a little bit at the bottom. The wig for She-Ra is actually made out of 2 separate wigs. I purchased the Ayumi wig from Purple Plum Wigs. The direct links to that are in my write-up as well as down below. I took apart one of them from essentially kind of this top crown section all the way down. I took off all of those wefts, and then I took those wefts and I took the second wig and I sewed them in between each of the wefts of that wig, essentially doubling the volume of the wig because she has just a ridiculous quantity of hair. That does make your wig pretty heavy, so just bear that in mind. You're going to want to either have some wig clips or a wig wig band to help keep it in place, because otherwise I found, especially the first day I wore it, it just slowly starts creeping backwards over the course of the whole day. And it's also a lot of weight on your head, so that's fun. The tiara for She-Ra is made much in the same way, again, as a lot of the gold pieces. These wings are made out of 2 pieces of thin EVA foam. So I cut out one full piece and then a second piece where I leaved these gaps in between, glued them together using some hot glue. Then I made the little sewn pockets, and then I slipped the piece in between and used some hot glue, just put some hot glue in these crevices and smooshed the fabric in there to get this nice like 3-dimensional effect with the fabric on and everything like that. And then hand stitched it together using a ladder stitch closed at the bottom. The band portion of it was made by wrapping gold fabric around. I could be a little sloppier, so on the inside it's just hot glued directly to the band. You just want to make sure you trim some of the notches in the corner to get nice tight corners here. To glue these fins directly to here, you're actually going to want to cut away some of the fabric because the fabric will pull away if you try and glue fabric to fabric, and you'll end up with weird fins flopping around. And you cut away some of the fabric and then glue directly foam to foam fins to the tiara. And then you can just add some hot glue to reinforce it. I also have a couple of combs that are attached, and these were attached to the tiara before I stuck the fins on. They're affixed with some thread and also a lot of hot glue. The gem here is attached using a fishing line. The gem is also sculpey with nail polish to make it nice and shiny. And so it's glued with E6000 directly to this piece of fishing line. And then that fishing line is glued to the sides of the tiara. So that allows it just to float and kind of disappears into the lightness of the wig once it's on. For She-Ra's makeup, I kept it relatively simple, just kind of a neutral base. Darken the eyebrows because they're really dark in the show, which is great. You don't have to try and make them blonde. And I also added glitter because why not? And the last thing is when I'm cosplaying, I do wear contacts. The ones that I use are the EOS Bubble Blue. Like everything else, I've got links down below. The last part of this cosplay is the shoes. So they are boot covers that fit around here. So I put the boots on my leg and then sort of sandwiched them with a bunch of felt to get the shape. And then once I had the shape, I drew on the design. For this section, I actually kept the pieces together so I didn't have a seam down the center front, and then the seam picks up right down here. So the seam is just on the bottom portion. So first layer is the white fabric goes on, and then the next layer is this gold band. Then after that, the blue fabric here. It's just one full piece, and then we put this golden circle bands on either side, and lastly the toe cap, which I again didn't put a center seam down, I just stretched it over in place. Now, much like everywhere else in the costume, I still used Wonder Under with the gold, even though it's not stretching. The Wonder Under really helps stabilize that super stretchy, slippery fabric. I actually put a couple of these gold strips down the back because I needed to hide the messy seam at the back, and I thought this looked cool. And then it just has a zipper that runs straight down the center seam. I sewed on this is just vinyl base, and then I glued on a bunch of rubber pieces that I have specifically for boot covers like this so that I didn't slip and fall on my butt in rainy Seattle while wearing these. And lastly, I added a band of this EVA foam wrapped in the gold spandex, which was done essentially identically to how I did the tiara, just wrapping it around, hot gluing it to the inside, and then gluing it directly to the boot. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this helpful. If you need more information or resources on this and many other cosplays, head to my website, randomtuesday.com. The link is in the description below. There I have a write-up for this cosplay that includes links to many of the things that I purchased and utilized for this particular costume. You can also catch me live on twitch.tv/randomtuesday, where I'm often working on cosplay and I'm always happy to answer your questions about anything that I might be able to help with. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can get those sweet notifications for when I have a new video out. And finally, thank you to each and every one of my patrons over on Patreon who made this video and this cosplay a reality. If you're able to do so and want to help support me in creating more tutorials and resources, then head over there. Any monthly amount is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching.